but that's your fault.
All right, we should be live. Let me wait till everybody gets in.
There's nobody in.
They'll be in soon. They'll be in soon. Let
Nope.
me put some background here.
They boycotted.
Yeah,
They
probably.
boycotted. They boycotted.
They'll be in. See where the peeps are.
There's no peeps, man. You lost all the peoples.
I'm not going to talk to myself.
Somebody.
We got somebody here.
I wouldn't join the program if you were running it. I know
All
that.
right. Let's see who we got. We got Veg here. Sounds great now. All right. Nothing like a
Thanks,
restart,
Veg.
right?
Nothing like somebody competent running the other end.
Competent.
You're competent, incompetent. Not only that,
All right, we'll
you're
wait a couple
incompetent
minutes.
and you're incontinent. You know what I
Veg,
mean?
it's good to see you. Really liked your last video. It was cool. You know, that story about you taking your car all the way down to Key West and then get a hitch a ride on a car trailer to come back and all that. Joey, WTF? Shit happens. How do you like that? Yeah, my Lou Groovy look, right? It's the only way this thing works. All right, we got Max in the house. Okay, we're getting everybody in here. Joey's in, Veg is in. A couple more and we'll be set. So we appreciate everybody having the patience to come back on here. We don't plan these things, folks, as you can see. All right.
Hey, doofus head, look at your messenger. You should have 18 pictures for me.
Messenger? All right, we can do that.
See if you got them.
Shit. Messenger, Dave. Now you're saying Messenger in Facebook, right?
No,
Or
messenger on your.
iMessage. No, it's not in
iMessage.
Facebook.
Well, I know that. I didn't send it Facebook.
Okay, you said Messenger because Messenger is the thing on Facebook.
It's oh Jesus
All right.
God.
Okay. Let me see if I
I
delete
sent it by
price today 18. Okay, got him. Got
Yeah, I
him.
know you did. You got him the first time. You just didn't know. You got the second time. Now you think you got
looks
it the
like
third time.
It says 10 photos here. Let me see what's going on. All right. I see 2 here, but it says 10 photos. We'll just keep dragging them. Yes, I don't know. We'll be fine. All right. Let's. I'll just keep that there because I'll do that little intro.
Yeah, you don't need it.
about some things that happened today. All right. All right. The do-over, I suppose. Good evening, everybody. It's great to see everybody, or at least to see everybody's avatar. We got Bella. How you doing, Bella? It's great to see you. Veg, T-Bone, great to see you. Yeah, it's great to see everybody. It really is. Really, really nice.
Well, can I say something?
No, but
Well, I'm
you'll
going
do
to
it
anyway.
anyway.
Right. It's not great for me to see you. You look like Bobo the Wonder Wrestler. Did you? First of all, did you shave your head today?
I did shave my head today. I did shave
Okay.
my head. I took a shower about an hour ago, and I said,
Oh, good. Well, that's
Gonna
good that everybody can know that. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to start the show this way. I had a conversation today with someone who's from California, but he's originally from Poland. And real intelligent guy. He's a marine biologist. He lives under the yoke of the Soviet Union while he lived in Poland. And I've told the story before, but his father went through torture during World War II from the Nazis, and he said one of the best things he did was get out of Poland and went to the United States. He's been living here for like 30 or 40 years. We had our discussion about Ukraine, and he was very positive, as am I, about what's going on there, mentioning that it looks like they've really taken the battle to the Russians. Putin's really, really underestimated the ability of the Ukrainian army and probably overestimated his own army. So we know that things have gotten better. And while we're basically agreeing with each other, it dawned on me, no matter what good comes out of this thing in Ukraine, it may not matter because we're slipping back right here. Just recently, the last 24 hours, Mitch McConnell and a group of Republicans went to Ukraine. Okay, fine. And I guess they were trying to say, look, Jill Biden went to Poland to see some of the refugees. So it's time for the Republicans to show up. And it seems like it was not so much the fact that they wanted to show support of Zelensky, but that they were afraid that Biden would somehow benefit from all of this, which he is, of course, which means they're trying to, at least beginning to make a political, trying to show that they're really a part of this too. Because don't forget, the only people who came with McConnell today were a group of Republicans. There were no Democrats there. So that's an issue. And, I'd like to show you quickly. This may be somewhat helpful. We'll see a little article here with Steve Bannon. I don't know if you can see this. Now, Bannon's pissed at McConnell for going there. Okay? See, he says GOP senators turfed out for Ukraine trip. Then you have Marjorie Greene, who's mocking McConnell for going there, not needing a bulletproof vest, basically saying, why are you going there? If this thing is so dangerous, why don't you have your vest on? So basically, we're starting to see within the Republican Party, the more right wing, if you can call it part, basically saying that, we don't really need to be in Ukraine. We know Rand Paul tried to muck things up the last few days, and you have to wait another week and a half to get more aid to Ukraine. And by the way, as much as we've been giving them a lot of aid, something like 70 artillery pieces, if you think about a 500-mile border with the Russians in terms of fighting, if you have 90 pieces over 500 miles, that's not a lot. You probably need 2 or 3 times that much there to be able to handle what's going on. So again, as the conversation ended, I kept thinking about, well, we have some positive things going on over there, but over here, everything is batshit crazy, absolutely crazy. And we'll be talking about that tonight because Dave is going to discuss the Supreme Court and other things. So even if Biden comes out winning in this situation, which is a really win for everybody, and maybe Russia just dissolves, because maybe not so much as Russia, but the Russian Republic dissolves. Already you've seen overtures from Kazakhstan, maybe they want to get out of the deal, maybe Chechnya and all these other countries. A lot of good things could happen. Of course, they may have nuclear weapons, these countries, that's bad. But again, long story short, all of this won't matter if we can't get our shit together. And it's looking worse and worse and worse every day. And Dave has said this ever since we won the election, warning us, saying, now this may make you nervous, blah, blah, blah. So Dave, I'm going to let you take over and discuss this as a whole, about what we're facing here. It seems like we're living under duress here, much like Poland and Ukraine both were living under duress historically from Russia, for 120 or 30 years each. That's why they, by the way, seem to be so close. There's a camaraderie there. Are we going to be living under duress, Dave?
Well, the best guess, and that's all you can do in this business anymore, is the answer is yes. And you pointed out a very important, I think, fact. If you go back 20 years on these fact-finding missions or junkets or whatever you want to call them politically, usually there were some representatives from both parties there. It appears, at least from my perspective here in Washington, D.C., that if a Republican is in the bathroom, a Democrat might come in if they had to pee, a congressman or a senator. But if it were the reverse, I don't think Republicans even want to pee next to a Democrat. It was interesting today. I spent some time, quite a bit of time, I guess, in D.C. Supporting, but also listening to the marchers who were, of course, upset with a Supreme Court decision that there's only one reason for the decision they made. And that is because, well, there could be two. I shouldn't say one. So let's just name them. Religious fervor and patriarchy. Now, somebody might say, well, wait a minute, that Republican Supreme Court justice who is a woman did it too. But if you study her background and the church she comes from, which I find interesting that she's a judge, and I don't really know what her husband does, but I don't think her husband's a Supreme Court justice, which is a pretty high position. Only 9 people in the world hold it, where a woman is subservient to a man. Now, you're right, Brian. In Ukraine, every day we see tragic pictures of war. I don't know if there's anything that's a non-tragic picture of war, whether it's real or whether it's on Star Trek. War is a bad thing. We fought them since the beginning of time, and we'll probably fight them until the end of time, unless nature decides we're unworthy to be guardians of this planet and comes up with a way to take us out. But you are right. As much as I am concerned about the Ukraine situation, and there were 2 things that surfaced this week. One is a continuing report that Vladimir Putin suffers from, blood cancer, doesn't look good, isn't acting right. Does that make him more human or less human? Only he knows for sure. If he is indeed terminally ill, which we don't know, would it be, well, I'm going out. I'm going to go out with a literal bang. So we don't know that. And the other thing is, as you look at the stability, you're saying, well, something good happens and then something bad happens. I guess you saw this week, everyone, Finland would like to join NATO. I think it would be good for NATO. I think it would be good for Finland. I think it would be good for us. But now Turkey has reservations about letting Finland in. And that's the instability of the world. Who's together, who's not. And we can't do a lot to control that. But then when you bring it back to domestic, watching the women, men, gay, straight, black, white, very diverse crowd, much more diverse than you would see on a anti-abortion rally and march. There's a lot of anger. Now, anger's a good thing if it's channeled properly, but with anger, a lot of times comes demonstration. And if the pictures took, there's a couple pictures that I took that actually prove that point. So it was great today to see. I'm terrible with crowd counts, and but they were estimating 15,000 people, and they were roughly 20 abreast, give or take 20 to 25, and it took more than 40 minutes for them to pass any given point. So it was a lot of people. The question becomes, what did they accomplish? Now, they showed their power. We now have the new slogans and sayings that are much different because the situation is different. In 1968, 69, those of us against the war marched through D.C. Hey, 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 LBGJ, how many kids did you kill today? Or one of my personal favorites, fuck you, Agnew. Now, there was one difference today, which should not be that comforting. And Brian, I'll ask you, since you play the role of every man or every woman or every person on the show, when we marched in the 60s and early 70s, we were well aware, because it was to the forefront, that there were sharpshooters positioned on every government building, ready at a moment's notice to take us out. Today, you didn't see that. You saw a very limited police presence. But here's my question, Brian. We have a Democrat in the White House. If we get a Republican, and I spent a lot of time today with two women. It's always nice to find somebody older than me, and they were 75 and 76, and I was 70, and they were down there. And we were saying we'd all been protesters throughout, and they're pretty much regular political protesters. But this one, the abortion issue, has them set back because that seemed to be settled law. Now, we know that the Republicans have had as a major commitment the repeal of Roe v. Wade. As we sit here tonight and listen or talk on this show, Roe v. Wade is still the law of the land. However, it appears, and again, you have to say the word appears, from the Alito memo, well, it's not a memo, it's like a pre kind of rationale for a decision, that he and four other Republicans are ready to do in Roe v. Wade. So, Brian, I get back to my question. I don't see the country coming together, okay? If a Republican regime, and that's the proper word for them now, they're not a political entity, they're a regime, comes in, it will get worse, and I think it will get more dangerous. Do you feel that? I mean, again, kind of talking about those snipers we used to see. They weren't there when LBJ was there. They were there when Richard Nixon was there.
Well, this goes back, Dave, to what we've talked about a lot about, and that is, the changing demographics of the country. And it certainly seems to me that the Republicans, again, saw the writing on the wall. They were uncomfortable with a minority population was now going to become the majority, and that meant African Americans, Latinos. And I think what they have become accustomed to is something they didn't even realize until now, is control. Because the Anglo-Saxons, for want of a better expression, had controlled this country for so many years. They saw it slipping. When we were happy that Obama had won, we saw, something that the forefathers we're talking about, the democracy, that things actually had changed. We had gotten to the point where you had an African American president. We were looking up to things. Now they weren't looking up to that because they saw it as a lack of control. And MSNBC has been pushing this idea that they know they can't win the general election, and the numbers are against them. So they had to get control somehow, and this is what they're doing, and they will do anything to get control. It's actually synonymous with what's going on in Russia with the people who, are into that, control Russian leadership, KGB thing going. It's really the same thing. What you're seeing is, how they say in physics, or Einstein said that, these small particles can exist at the same time at different parts of the universe. That connection. I'm trying to make an analogy, but it's kind of like that, where you see, you don't see me, but where you see this kind of thing happening, where it's almost a predictable behavior, and they don't want to give up control. So they have the perfect platform, Dave, to do it. I mean, they already have the cheat. They've got things like, Senate control. They've got states like North Dakota and South Dakota, whose population together is less than that of Portland, Oregon. They've got twice as much influence on what happens than the state of California, which has 44 million people. California should have 20 senators. And see, the cheat's in, and they have it at all levels. And you notice that Trump was doing this, Dave, right in the beginning. I mean, the plan was there, and it was with all the judges. And then you see it in all of these decisions that have been helping Trump out. Okay? Now, by the way, I'm still angry at the pardons he gave to Roger Stone and Michael Flynn and all this kind of, I mean, you can see the corruption. It is exactly like Russia. And when you say, well, it might not be like that, they don't put us in the gulag yet.
Brian,
you
I
would say,
wanna
like,
jump
this
in on
couldn't
that.
happen yet.
And I want to jump in on that. As I've spent, my couple hours today, I'm thinking that very thought. A lot of Americans rely on the fact, let's talk about protest, and we've talked about it on this show. If you protest in Russia, there's a good chance you'll be disappeared. And whatever that means. Is it to a modern gulag in Siberia? Is it death? Is it just buried in a prison? Nowhere. But basically what happens in Russia, or has been happening, there's been no change, correct?
Recently, there's been something happening there. But yes, I know what you're saying.
I'm saying, but over the period of all the protests from way back when.
Yeah, they're locked in. They're still locked in.
Or Pussy Riot, or
Right.
any, Well, here you had the freedom to march and the freedom to show your force, but nothing changed today in terms of influencing the outcome. So, which is worse, they both are leading up to non-winnable situations. And here, because we're supposed to be somewhat democratic, it may even be the psychological toll may be worse. You've talked at length, and I think you're absolutely correct, on the Russian mindset. And I think there is now two American mindsets, more than that probably, but two major, classified, I suppose, along political lines. It would be liberal and conservative. And you talked about something I want to pick up later on tonight. You're beginning to see rifts in the Republican Party, but are they enough?
Right. Are they enough?
Will they join together at the last moment? I'm going to use Mitch McConnell's own words. I believe these words. I don't believe much of what he says. And you remember a few weeks ago, he was asked, I thought, a very pointed question. You appear not to be in sync with Donald Trump. you've been somewhat critical of him. He certainly has been very critical of you. If indeed he is the Republican Party nominee, which there's still a very good chance that he will be, will you support him? And he basically said yes. And everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people were stunned. How does that work? In the Republican mindset, well, I'll use a basketball terminology. Duke University and Mike Krzyzewski's had a tremendous program, but they're one of the more hated programs if you're not a Dookie. And there's a saying, A, B, D, anybody but Duke. And Republicans are A, B, D, D, anybody but a Democrat. And Democrats have a tendency to be more divided, whether it's by race, whether it's by a centrist position versus a liberal position. I'll ask you, Brian, again, playing the everyman. If Donald Trump is the nominee, do you think most people who voted for him and are Republican would vote for him again?
Absolutely.
Right.
And I'll tell
Now,
you, again, this, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but the bigger problem, first of all, we cannot trust the red states as far as all of these, polling stations. You cannot trust them with the votes there in terms of, the final tallies there. Number one, you can't, and then you can't trust the governors of these states because the way they count the votes. This thing is rigged. The man has projected, he will not accept the loss. And Biden better be ready. And apparently Merrick Garland is not.
Well, here we go. My thoughts on that. I'm not so sure that it matters in the always red states. They're going to go Republican without cheating. And you don't
right,
get
but
more.
they'll do everything to pad that vote.
And that's part of it. But remember, one of my problems with America is we have the Electoral College, and so that's the opposite of the popular vote. Now, where the concern would come, I would think, it's where my concern will be, is the swing states. And there's what, maybe a dozen, right? I live in one, Virginia. You went to school at Bowling Green in Ohio,
right?
Although Ohio's pretty much put in.
Well, Bowling Green also was somewhat conservative, and it took me a little bit of time to figure that out.
Well,
just because there were parties and there was pot there didn't mean it wasn't conservative.
Oh no. Well, then you've got what I consider to be the four most important states in a national election. That would be Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin and Minnesota. Minnesota has long been a Democratic stronghold. It's not as much now. Pennsylvania was kind of stunning. That has a lot to do with voter turnout in the cities, which are really two, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, offsetting all of the rest of Pennsylvania.
And we should probably add, although you do need liberal white vote, you need that no matter what. But if it were not for the African Americans of this country, Donald Trump and democracy would have been gone. So we owe that.
Oh, no question. But here's the problem. Honestly, if I were a black person, I'm not sure Joe Biden has repaid that debt. But I would look at it.
As appointees, you would have to say yes. We did. He's done that.
I would hope that I would look beyond that, right, to just the point you made. Whether it's symbolic or not, whether he needed to do it politically. whether it was his first choice or his 51st choice, he did choose a black woman as his vice president. And I don't know that Joe Biden knew anything about being a president when he entered. I mean, he had never been one, but he had certainly been a vice president. So he knew that job well enough that I don't think he would have appointed someone who didn't think could do the job. Again, I'm going to go back to watching, and hopefully those pictures took and you'll be able to see some in a little bit. But I was really trying to feel out the crowd today by their signs and their chants. And I'm not real confident that there's any way to change what appears to be the Supreme Court's decision. Now, this week, there was a lot of column inches devoted here in Washington, D.C. about the fact that Supreme Court Justice Roberts, his legacy is on the line. It appears, and I've said this before, that he is aware of Supreme Court history. And he knows that his name will be forever attached to the decisions that come out of there. And however this plays out, it's hard to compare times. Is this as significant as some of the civil rights ruling that came out of the Supreme Court, some which were overturned and looked like we were heading in the right direction? I don't think that's even a fair question. It is to a very large group of people. And the two ladies that I was with kept coming back to one of my favorite words today as we sat there for a while talking, waiting for the marchers. Hypocrisy. Very simply, the group that wants to take away women's rights to determine what they do with their body is the same group who was screaming, "You don't have a right to order me to put a mask on," right? Can't hold those two positions. This sham that they're somehow pro-life, I would ask them this. They wouldn't answer, they'd deny, but how are you pro-life when every single position that you hold after the child that you've ordered to be born is detrimental to that child? No education funding, no this, no that. Now, I don't like to jump ahead because we don't know, but I would say if the Supreme Court gets its way with this, and its way is to severely limit or abolish the idea of Roe v. Wade, which all five of the justices at some point have indicated is the right thing to do. That's just the start, And it's not like these are normal people trying to make the country better. That's what they believe they are. But everything that makes America is on the chopping block right now. Every single thing. Now the question becomes, what do you do? Brian, if you could start throwing up a couple of
pictures. All right, let me go to
and I'll comment on some of them, and just put them up one at a time. And
all right, so we want to hold on, let me go to
I don't care.
Message.
They can be in any order. But I think it gives a cross section of where we are.
All right.
I didn't.
It says, I'm going to actually show it through the web thing, and if I have to drag them in, I'll drag them in. But
Whatever you want to do.
I'm going to first try. I think I'm going to have to just
Well,
open up the scene here and just throw them in, because
okay.
I'll throw them on top of me because it might not come out right.
All right.
You can.
Yeah, bring it down because you want to see the whole.
All right. Let me. You know what? Let me put a background here because I don't want
Yeah,
to disturb
no, just throw
everybody with
black.
my shit here.
Right.
If I can just get my shit together. Hold on a second.
Sure.
All right, let's get backgrounds here.
And what I'm certainly not going to insult anyone's intelligence. You can read, but I'm going to try to give it some context in addition to.
Okay, let me put some.
Yeah, if you just throw black.
I'm going to put it like a gray thing or something, and then I got to put it behind it. Hold it for a second. Let me just put it behind there. I'll be there.
There you
in a
go.
second. Hold on. There we go. All right, so that should be somewhat I can.
That's good. Just keep it up.
Okay, let me just throw you in here because you're going to describe it. So I want to.
Well, I don't need to be on there.
I think you need to have some.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Obviously, one big theme is that the court is illegitimate. Is that true? Yes. I think Mitch McConnell won a victory when he was able to stymie Obama and the Democrats, but he also showed that this is not a legitimate court. Now, what does that mean? I think it makes the anger even greater. You notice the other one, again, coming after, this is just another GOP. We deserve more rights than a gun. If indeed Roe v. Wade is taken away, you'd be hard pressed to argue that guns in America are not more important than women. So throw the next one up. Let's see what we got.
Right now, it says there's 10 photos here or 12 photos.
There's 19. I said.
Right. Well, I only see 2. Maybe they're hidden behind each other.
They are behind each other. That is correct. So
all right. So I don't know what's going on here. Okay, I'm going to throw this one. This is what I see so far. Okay, so I'm going to drag this guy in here.
Okay. Now, of course, that's just clever, abort the court. But I was really fascinated by the gentleman's T-shirt. You see that, Brian?
Birds aren't real.
Does that mean anything to you?
Trying to think if it should.
Well, it's the latest.
Well, I guess they're trying to say that.
Now, don't go there if you don't know. Don't guess, because I mean, it wouldn't. It's something. It's the latest in right-wing paranoia. Here we go. Unbelievable, but it's growing in validity with American nutcases. The birds aren't real. Birds are automated drones sent out by Democrats and Joe Biden and the secret, state to spy on us. Now, how do you prove that? Well, it's very easy for these people. You see them on high wire lines, right? Well, what they're doing there is they're recharging. Now, how do you argue with someone who believes that? You don't. And this is what many in the other side believe. But what's worse, I don't think Mitch McConnell believes that. I don't think Josh Hawley. I don't think Ted I'm so dumb Cruz believes that. But they will not stand up and say, you're wrong. You're a danger to America because you're crazy. You got another one you can throw up, Brian?
It says here, two saved, and I don't think.
All
I
right.
think you're going to have to share it on your end
I'll just. Well, I'll just.
because we need to see them. I mean, unless
I
you can
know.
send. Can you send it
Well,
through?
no. Here's what you could. Here's what you could do, Brian. Uh, take your message, right? Pull it out. Minimize your screen. Pull it out and pull them in that way. You should be able then to pull them directly into
Well, I'm going to show you
cameras.
what I have. I mean,
Yeah. Go ahead.
it's actually kind of weird because usually if they're sent to me in multiple photos, I'll see them. So I'm going to give you an example here.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because I had to click on them to bring them up. So.
Web. Now here. Now this is iMessage, and is the one photo there. There's one photo there. But up here, I don't know if you can see it, above the photo in the upper left here, it says 10 photos. I'm clicking it, and
No.
nothing's happening.
Okay.
And I
Do
can't-
do something for me. Just click directly on that photo.
Okay.
Then click again.
It seems to be a live one. Let me see. On it.
It's just bringing it in. No, it didn't bring it up. All right.
Says so. I guess it didn't save it.
Go to your email for a moment and
All right,
just
I'll do
check
that.
again because I sent it. I sent it
All
by
right.
email. So go to your email.
Okay, hold on. Let me go. Find the email. I have Val Demings and Arby's.
You know what I mean?
Team Whitmer. Gene, I don't have it from you. I really don't. Can you send it again?
All right. Yeah, I'll send it again, but let me do a couple things and then I'll turn it back over to you. I'd like to ask our audience tonight to respond because I'm out of answers. You can't give up. You have to keep fighting.
By the way, everybody,
Fight.
please share this if you would. And if you've never subscribed to the channel, please do so. We put a lot of work in. We don't monetize. We just want to have a bigger team.
Yeah. Well, I think that's very important. Not that you and I are more important than anyone else. I just think it's going to take all of us, not just in numbers, but for ideas. So I'm kind of at a loss here, and it's unusual for me. Usually I think there's some solution, but I don't know how do you attack a court that can't be attacked. All right, let's look. What do I mean by that?
Right, you can attack it.
They're the ultimate. Now, let's look at a couple of things that happened outside this week, but certainly more than tangential to the issue. First of all, groups began picketing and protesting outside of the homes of justices, the 5. And all of a sudden, there's a tremendous uproar from the Republican leadership that this is anti-American and this is this and this is that. Your favorite senator, somebody wrote on her sidewalk in chalk, that would be Susan Collins.
And she's another one who went to Ukraine,
right,
shaking Zelensky's hand.
Do not allow Roe v. Wade to die, towards that effect. You know what she did, Brian? She called the police. Okay.
The police.
The police. She said, I've been threatened and fear for my life. There are now guards.
Yeah, she's kind of like Donald Trump when you have Black Lives Matter peacefully protesting. He goes into the bunker. Could you imagine if there was a real attack?
Well, that
shows you their fear. Yeah, and you know what it is? They're probably, again, it's probably afraid of minorities. The minute they see someone who's African American, they're ready to.
But I will say,
they don't, and that's another thing too. By the way, I'm going to interrupt. Is that they don't feel sorry, but they don't feel comfortable around African Americans and Latinos.
Well, would you if you treated them like they do?
Well, that was my whole point. Like, Dave, you and I know how that doesn't enter our minds. I mean, especially teaching where you did and I do.
Right.
We see beyond that. It's really like a family. And it's the way it should be. But see, they can't think that way. They
Why not?
operate in complete fear.
And
And that's
I would
racism in itself, because you're
Oh,
fearing
yeah.
somebody with no good reason.
I would say to Senator
Affordable.
Collins, if she was here or if she ever listens or around, I say, Senator Collins, I really don't have any respect for you as a senator. Not necessarily because you're a Republican, although you and I would disagree on many positions. Not because you're a conservative, and we would disagree on many positions. Not because, well, let me rephrase that. I would not give you props because there are time to time you do appear to work on some committees or some projects crossing the aisle. What I would submit to you is, from your own comments, you're either too gullible or too stupid to be a United States Senator. What do I mean by that? To a person of the last three nominated, she said, and she actually compounded the problem. She said, that's not what they said in the Senate. And if you listen, they all said indirectly settled law, which is the terminology.
Well, she didn't show any real indignation other than saying, I'm shocked.
Well,
You know?
I understand that. That's what I'm saying. So the point is, if you're shocked that Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett would lie, too gullible to be a senator.
Right.
If you're really believe them, then you're too stupid. And if you're lying, where you really are supporting them and you're trying to get whatever support you can for your pathetic race in your state, I'm not the bad person, then you're even worse. At least somebody like McConnell, you know where he's coming from. And this is not only a Republican trait. If I were in charge of the Senate, and I'm not, Joe Manchin tonight would be stripped of every committee that he's on.
Absolutely.
He becomes persona non grata. Now, the arguments, and I once made these a few years ago with Joe. He represents West Virginia, et cetera, et cetera. This is not the way it was. He is keeping the Senate from any chance of codifying any kind of law that would stop the Supreme Court from doing what it's doing. It's down to one Democrat. And on this issue, it's intolerable. Now, the problem becomes he is very well liked in the Senate on both sides. It has been said, and you have to be a little careful, but in Washington, the stories are usually true, that he throws the best parties. The last party he had was on his personal yacht. It got nice, right? Everybody sits around, and that is a problem. Women have been aware of it forever. Black men and women have been aware of it forever. Gay.
Then Dave, you're talking about Manchin, correct?
I'm talking about the good old boy system.
Okay, well then, and you're absolutely right. But I think it's about time that, for example, athletes, liberal athletes, and athletes of color at major universities in West Virginia say, we're not playing. We're not going to this.
Very effective.
Then because you can't have your finger up your bum the whole time. You got to eventually do something.
I'm going to say one name, and I certainly agree with you, but I'll tell you why it's not, and that would be Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
You're
matters that much.
You're not going to tell me that there's 20, 60 maybe now, because he's a little bit older, you're not going to tell me there's 65 quarterbacks in the NFL better than him. There's no way. No way. So there's some fear of that.
Or even second
And,
strings. It doesn't matter. Like, whether you be first string or second string, that would be, 50 some
well,
quarterbacks. And there's no
I'm
chance.
saying 65. I mean, whatever. He's not the 66th, because some teams keep 3, some teams keep 2, some teams keeps 4, one on the taxi and dress 3. So there's a lot of quarterbacks. Now, there is a theory or thought that professional football and professional basketball are a form of, in the sense of control, slavery. Now, it's hard. There certainly is a difference between you get nothing except being fed and whipped every other day with millions of dollars. But it compounds the problem of young men doing something about it, because I think there are 3 things. Number one, they have exceptional skill and they don't want to risk that. I can appreciate that. Secondly, they're very young to say, I'm going to take a stand that could keep me from being in the professional league.
Well, this is where you need people like Al Sharpton within the African American community, and to convince people. Look, John Carlos knew what he had to do. Others have done it.
But it was yes, John Carlos is exceptional. I mean, I feel very privileged and very lucky. I got to spend some time with him here in DC. And all I can say, there are some special people in the world. John Lewis was one. John Carlos was one.
But we're certainly capable of understanding how critical this is. Even in Russia, even if you can't go out into the streets, there are things you can do. And so, for example, if an athlete, is a good athlete, decides he or she can't or doesn't want to go to West Virginia, there are other options if you're that good.
Well, let's you raise an interesting point. John Carlos and Tommy Smith become iconic symbols of American protest with the left arm up at Mexico City. When I was working at the museum, I did some talks on it and some tours. And so I had to do a lot of research on it. Here are some facts that a lot of people don't know. I didn't know them until then. First of all, Dr. Martin Luther King at that time was the leading black figure in America. You mentioned Al Sharpton. There's a few others, but nobody rises the way Dr. King had control. And so it was actually a couple of older black coaches who were coaching track athletes and others entered in the Olympics who met with Dr. King and his brain trust, and they were planning an all African American boycott. Now, this was the Summer Olympics, and in April, right, of 1968, King is gunned down, and it became very disjointed. And actually, Smith and Carlos acted alone. The point is, it would have been much more effective if you have a large group. But if you have 25 black athletes and 15 go on some kind of protest like you suggested, and 10 don't, West Virginia can still field a football team, right? And so it has to be effective to shut it down. So you've got the idea of money. You've got the idea of this is what I was meant to do. And then you're asking young people who realize that the deck is so stacked against them that that's a lot to ask. Um, and I don't think we as white Americans have a.
But there is a lot to lose too. You know.
Well, I understand that, but people, even today, I've been thinking a lot about this, Brian. Why did the sense of urgency and the sense of passion seem to be more in the 60s than today? And I've come up with this. For Black Americans, it's pretty obvious. When you have to go to the back of the bus, that's, when you're getting beat, when you're in the segregated schools, and what happened is we've made some progress, not enough, but enough for a number of people to say, well, it's getting better.
And wasn't there some type of gestalt going on or some...
And that's what I'm going to get to next.
Okay.
Then I'd love to tell you, sitting here tonight, that I was 100% convinced that the war was wrong because of universal peace was the action. I do believe that. I realize it's unrealistic. But basically, if I'm being honest with myself, I didn't want to get killed, right? So it gave an urgency to my protest. And
by the way, jackpot here. I'm going to interrupt, but yes, we're going to get to that too.
Yes. It was a time, the question becomes, or a question, I shouldn't say the question, does a person make the times or does a time make a person? And they're both in play, just like heredity and environment are in play. And sometimes it's more this, sometimes it's more that. And the 60s were a time when, for young people, it was just a time of looking back on the 50s and coming out of the idea of living under the threat of the bomb and the Cold War and all this thing going. The nation just exploded with young people. And it was basically young versus old. And this division now, is your neighbor against you. The old, the old myth about the Civil War, neighbor versus neighbor, finally split. There were a few, but basically it was geographic. But this is, Brian, I guarantee you, because I lived in the neighborhood when you did, I guarantee there's 15 families, maybe more, in your neighborhood who don't share your beliefs.
Absolutely.
And that's true in any white-dominated areas in America, not in Black-dominated communities. So back, and I'll just kind of, then we want to get to some more things, but and I'll put the pictures on Facebook on our page tomorrow.
Well, if you want to try tonight, I mean, I'm
no. You know what I'll do? I mean, even it won't be belated, and it was my fault because I stayed out there too long to get them to you in a reasonable time. I'll put together something for next week's show. So I mean, it's not going to go away. That's what I think is interesting about this, and I think newspapers. This is one of the things I'm faulting. This is a long story unfolding, right? And sometimes we all get caught up in the moment, right? Now, can you bring up the comment again? It is time to talk about Mr. Garland.
That was exactly, because, we haven't even talked about this today. And I mean, especially you, Dave, because I know your feelings about this.
Well, here's I'm going to say what I know. When I say what I know to be true, notice I'm not saying it's true. It's what I know to be true. Okay. So, there is a long established belief that if you're going to go after any figure, you better have an airtight case. Now, again, I just look at Matt Gaetz, and there's no question he didn't ask anybody's age before he had sex with them. Okay? How long's that been out there? Okay. There's no question, and we could go on and on and on. So, well, there's even a more hesitancy to go after the President of the United States. I understand that. But there comes a point when even if you don't have the airtight case, you have to bring it. And if Merrick Garland were here tonight, if he were to listen to the show, I would tell him, or if he invites me to dinner at the Justice Department, I tell him, Merrick, you got to get off your ass and do something. Now, there are people who know far more about Merrick Garland and the Justice Department who say he is working on it. Well, every day that clock is ticking, right? And if Donald Trump somehow escapes all criminal charges, I don't want to ever hear any Republican ever say again that the law is equal, which, yeah, what does it matter? They're still going to be in control if Donald Trump isn't. One thing I was thinking about today as I went there, and Brian, I don't know if you've been following this story. Of course, it's a big story here. Donald Trump had a hotel. You couldn't see the White House from there. Well, you could if you went up top, but it was that close, right? And the day he refused to recuse himself from running it, he was in violation of the Emoluments Clause, which basically says the President of the United States cannot receive anything of value that is greater than it should be because he can have an influence or some sway in decision-making policies. I know for a fact it was filed within minutes after Donald Trump, the charge, and we just ended up overlooking it. Now, at that point, by the time that took over, we had Republicans in charge of justice. So I didn't really expect that much, but I expected more from Mr. Garland. And I think with Mr. Biden and Mr. Garland, I can make the same statement. Every day that Merrick Garland is there, it's better than any Republican that could be there. But not if we're going to lose every battle because of inability of them to do what they can
right.
do.
And my only hope is that he's not being intimidated. Now, I have no way of knowing, and it shouldn't be that way. Maybe he is being careful. People have suggested this. But, there's this frustration, and maybe it's just our frustration. Because we see everything going in. Every time there's a ruling, it's appealed, and there you go. And then Roger Stone's out. And then Bannon, nobody's going to show up for a subpoena. And that's going to happen in June. Nobody's going to show up.
Well, again, one comment, and then I'll come back. As I was walking through the city today, going toward the rally, I went by what was once the Trump Hotel, which is the source of now we find crime, corruption, unbelievably huge in that building. Not unbelievably. Of course it was going to be that way. The money that was raked in, astounding amounts. Would you pay $5,000 for a room? I don't think so. But you would if you were trying to get the ear of the president or show him what a good guy you are. Well, now a lot of people are breathing a sigh of relief. He's gone. Wrong attitude, people. He's gone. It will now be a Waldorf Astoria. But what happened there isn't gone, Brian. Until he's charged, it's meaningless that he left. And so, Mr. Garland, back to you for a moment. Until you act, and now you have something really coming up, Brian, that could be very definitive. This week, as you alluded to or said, 5, including Representative from California, who's the leader of the Republican Party on the excuse me, on the House side, and 4 other colleagues have been subpoenaed to appear before the committee looking into January 6th. None of them have agreed to appear. People like like Stone and others haven't.
And nor would they want to, Dave, because they're going to lie. And they can't lie because,
well, they can lie.
They could, and they're certainly capable of it. But I think they would rather not show up.
Well,
and wait for the courts and to let the Supreme Court, when it finally gets to that, they've got the ace in the hole. And there we go, as you say. Well, and there you go.
Right. And here's what happens with that. I mean, again, I covered a lot of court, not at that level, not the Supreme Court level, but I would pretty much say that with the Fifth Amendment, which is an important amendment, that you could take the Fifth all day, right? So there has to be some other reason why they're not appearing. The fact is that they're criminal and corrupt, but the Fifth Amendment can get you out of that. So what is it? They're playing the game that Donald Trump didn't invent, but is the best at it. Delay, 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 refuse, delay, challenge, postpone, sue, and eventually it goes away. And the one that shocks me, I said I wasn't going to get shocked anymore, is what happened in New York when they dropped the case. It's now done. The grand jury investigating the New York wrongdoings has been disbanded. And both the chief prosecutors who have resigned said, we were there. We were ready. We felt that we had a valid case. And they're not going to risk their career taking some bogus case like the Republican attorneys do, like Rudy did and some of the others. So, Merrick, get off your ass. Charge somebody with something. But I think the big one, Brian, to look at is because there's no other body that can help out the committee other than the Department of Justice. They can't send their own police force to enforce against these congressmen if they don't show.
Well, what this individual said to me today from Poland, and I take his advice because he's lived here for 30 to 40 years. He lived in Poland during the Soviet Union, and he knows history. He spoke of the 120 years or so that Poland was living under duress from Russia, historically. Same for Ukraine. It wasn't the Russian government. It was they were all living under duress. Okay, and it was minority rule, and we see that happening, basically all over the world. And when you look at the number of years there historically, and by the way, Putin was the one who said that, Russia laid claim to that part of Ukraine. But as I just pointed out, Poland and Ukraine could certainly have laid claim to that area too. It was just they were living under duress. Right. So thinking today, I thought, wow, again, I'll be like that person in 1941 or 42 who did not know what the result was going to be. And that person died, maybe an 80-year-old person in 1942 or 41 when things didn't look good. And I told this person, I said, I don't want to leave this planet, so to speak, feeling this way. And he said to me, well,
good luck with
you're
that,
going to, he said, I have detached myself from that. He said, I care. I'm a microbiologist. I care about ecology. I will discuss things like climate change and the ecology of the world with anybody. But there's so many people who just simply don't listen that I detach in that sense because I don't want to be a martyr. He said, a volcano can explode two ways. It can implode and it can explode. And he said, Brian, you will destroy yourself if you keep going this way. You'll destroy yourself. And maybe that's the thing that it makes you and me very similar, and others. The anger, like I saw your anger last week when you posted on Facebook. It came out,
Oh, yeah.
and there are times when you
Well,
just say, "I'm going to." At some point, you can, and I don't want to see 100 years of just miserable life after me, because there's people, there'll be other Dave Prices and Brian Weinsteins out there,
I know
and in a much different world, if there is a world.
today my.
Dave, could you move a little closer or bring your mic up?
I'm
just
sorry.
a slight bit?
I'm sorry. Today, Judy and I have no little grandchildren. Our grandson became a teenager today, 13. So certainly I look at the world for Audrey and Owen. Audrey is 14, 17 months difference in their ages. And I want a better world for them. I want a better America for them. But very different characters, the two of those. Audrey is on a roll as a radical. In Alabama, that's pretty easy to, it's hard to do, but I mean, it's pretty easy to find reasons, and she's doing it down there. Owen's more, he'll just kind of float through. He knows what's wrong, but he was saying, sort of like your friend today, I think he actually understands that, where Audrey's getting consumed with it. And I like her passion. I love her passion. But I would worry at some point because, when you're out there fighting, you don't see the things improve or change.
Well, Dave, if I can make a hockey analogy, because I know we have a lot of Canadians here, and I don't mean this to be facetious, because I don't want to do this, but for Toronto fans, Toronto hasn't done anything in hockey since 1967. I mean, literally 50 some years, nothing. I feel like a Toronto Maple Leafs fan of you just almost expect the worst to happen, and you can't get out of it. You shake your head. You say, okay, now this is going to be it. We're going to get there, and it doesn't. So it's even worse because it's politics. We can get rid of sports and say this and that, but I had to make that analogy because
I think
it's almost inescapable.
And as I was talking to the two ladies that I spent the time with today, as I said, we had collectively, what would that be? 150, 250 year, 70, 240? Yeah, about 250 plus years total talking there. And what we all three agreed on was that we thought there was improvement. That we thought. And it seemed to be some validity to that, right? In my lifetime, I've seen, in my 70 years of the planet, I've seen growth in opportunity, laws limiting the idea of limiting women and Black Americans and immigrants, and all of a sudden, it's a Supreme Court that could strip it all away. And some of the best thinkers down here are saying, as they dissected and analyzed Alito's rationale and reasoning, and basically what it comes down to, if you really take it to its essence, it's kind of a double thing. It wasn't mentioned in the Constitution. Well, a lot of things were in the Constitution amendments, but even more, that's part of it. But the other thing is, there's not a precedent for it. Well, there is a precedent for it, right? 50 years of a nation has only been around, what's that, 1/6? Abortion has been legal. And in an age when it's more modern, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And just like I've said all along with the Bible, which is not the Word of God, if you believe it, fine, whatever. But if you're going to tackle the Bible, there's really two books there. Throw the friggin' Old Testament away, and the New Testament should take charge, right? Old Testament, fun stories. Imagine King David leering at a bathing Bathsheba, think about Daniel and the lion's den, whatever you want to think about. But when it comes to how you live your life, if you're a Christian, Jesus Christ, Christianity. Well, it's the same thing here. Uh, Certainly today, we know much, much more in terms of science and understanding of how the human mind works. So why do we rely on a document written so long ago? But it's worse than that to me. The document, the Constitution, was written to create a country, not to maintain it. And that's very important for people to understand. Creating the country was the purpose of that. And it was a reaction to the treatment before. And one of the big things, as you look at this, was no king. The right to bear arms was based on the fear of mercenary armies and the Hessians. So it was all historically dated now. But here we go. And then back to your friend, Mr. Garland there. He has some power and he doesn't use it. And I think that's what I sense today in that march. A real, what would you say, enthusiasm for the moment, right? And sometimes it's easy to get caught up. We're going to make a change. They're not going to change. They're not going to change the Supreme Court's mind. I believe today, and I could be wrong, I think, quite honestly, if I had to pick whether a liberal released that or a conservative, I think a conservative released Alito's remarks to jam up the other four to make sure that Roberts couldn't bring one to his side.
I think somebody could have gone in the dumpster and found something.
No. It was.
How about a hacker?
And then your buddy, your favorite justice, or at least this week's favorite, you told me, Clarence Thomas, has the nerve, or what's the old term? The unmitigated gall to go to Dallas and say the leak has destroyed the Supreme Court. Pardon me, you're married to a woman who advocates for the insurrection of the United States of America. Maybe, Clarence, and I don't know when's the last time you had sex with your woman. And that's a personal thing between you and her. But the idea of it is you've been intimate with an enemy of the United States. But the fact that this decision was released is the threat to the court, and it's destroyed. What was the word he was using? It was like the integrity. That was it. Yeah, that ship sailed a long time ago. And what bothers me, and I don't know if it bothers anyone else out there, is you start looking back and you say, man, George W. Bush wasn't such a bad president. Yes, he was.
Yes, he certainly was.
Man, Justice Scalia wasn't.
And he shouldn't have been president in the first place.
Right. And Justice Scalia wasn't such a bad justice. Yes, he was. And what people are doing now, and it's understandable, but the past is gone. Does Hillary Clinton bear some of the blame for Donald Trump winning? Yes, she does. Either she herself.
But you know what? You can say that about Al Gore too. And they made mistakes. But if you think in the long run how things turn, I mean, in the end,
I'm just saying. I'm not saying
she still won.
I'm just saying, not saying major, but you can't just exonerate her.
No.
Look,
I'm not a fan of Hillary Clinton, but she's streets ahead of Trump.
Oh, no question. But either she or her brain trust arrogantly believed the same thing I believed, that there was no way she would lose to Donald Trump. Same way you could say, as much as I respect Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Would it be different if she had,
Right,
resigned?
I mean, you're right, and it's
And
interesting to
it's
speculate on.
meaningless. It's
But
meaningless.
again, it's
But
like
what
that
I'm
old
saying,
saying: "If my
Brian,
aunt had balls, she'd be
here's
my
what I'm
uncle."
saying.
But
More and more people are going to turn to those types of things, and they're going to say, "See, it's just nothing can be done." And I don't want anyone to interpret today my negativity toward what was accomplished today, and it was nationwide. At one point, I read where there's to be 250 various demonstrations around the country. But here's what I know or pretty much believe to be true. The one group that's not intimidated, doesn't give a flying fidooby about public opinion, is the Supreme Court. You can influence politicians sometimes. You can influence bureaucratic workers or members of the cabinet or even businesses. But the Supreme Court, the way it was designed and continue to operate, is actually above the laws that it decides. So, I still agree. You protest outside their houses, make life uncomfortable for them. I don't, that's great. I went up earlier this week just to see what the situation was. And again, it's like seeing any event in real time and there to see that fence up, and it's up there for the duration. Certainly says, America, land of the free. I don't know. And there was a handful of very dedicated women who have been leading a group every day. So there's a protest every day, not with large numbers, but again, making their presence felt. And so I started talking to some of the Homeland Security officers and around there. I said, "Where's the other side?" I said, "Oh, they came this morning." So, the other side is vested in this. And my last comment tonight on the Supreme Court and the decision is, you think America is divided tonight? Wait and see when it becomes official. That may be, I hate to use cliches, but that may be the Rubicon of which there's no real return to any kind of semblance of civility, or we can work together, or we're United States. I've said we've never been, but we found ways to work around our divisions. I don't see that happening now, Brian.
No, and that's thus divided we stand, and that's and that seems like it's our future. The only thing is I can say is, like you said, Dave, is how it'd be nice if we could secede or do something like that.
Well,
I don't know. We're too fair. We're too fair. The Democratic Party's too fair.
I agree with that, but the secession thing, I was spouting off, and that's me doing this, and I really would. But the logistics of such a thing make it almost impossible, with the exception, not saying this will happen, but it would be easiest for California, Washington, and Oregon to succeed by seceding. But even there, do all of us who like what they're going to do rush out there? There's only so much land, and so I don't know. My favorite position is one my son and some other economists have talked about, and I think it's the only thing that might work that I see, is somehow with the 10 or 12 biggest liberal or the richest liberal businessmen, etc., opening their own towns with their own businesses in North Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho. Do you realize that 10,000 votes could sway those states? You're not talking about hundreds of millions of people. You're not going to sway Alabama.
Right.
Texas. I had hopes for as it becomes the Silicon Valley of the South. But it seems that a lot of Mexican families are putting the Catholic Church idea of being anti-abortion ahead of their own safety. So I don't know.
Well, let's not put
But
any
yeah,
stock in the Russian Orthodox Church either.
no, well, I like to I speak. I like that. Well, I like that. I thought today I saw something online that just really captured the insanity. It's not all here in America. Dave's favorite position is missionary. Well, let me think about that. No, I'd like to be a mission. I will share this with you, Trev, and Brian remembers this. I think he was there. It made the entire high school when I worked there went ballistic. We took the Holland interest inventory. Do you remember that, Brian?
I know what it is. Yes.
Today, yeah. And we took it, and I came back. I was best suited to be a priest, a minister, a priest, or a rabbi. And everyone went, Jesus Christ, this is completely invalid and all that. I didn't see it as valid because I just saw I like to do the right things, but I wouldn't be. I think a teacher, it's a calling. To me, that was just a calling. So I guess you could link me, Trev, to missionary in that way, but no.
Well, don't forget, you're an orator. You like to speak.
Well,
and that has,
but
that's
no, I'm
certainly-
just laughing.
I think you're a lot more truthful. I think a priest can be truthful. They're just kind of diluted, but they're truthful in the sense that
in what they believe. And see, but that's the danger. And I've said it, Brian, and that's another thing. It's pretty bad when you're crazy and you don't know you're crazy, right?
Right.
And that's basically describes the extreme right wing, the extreme evangelicals, the extreme gun nuts that are forming and actually directing now or assuming the position of directing the Republican Party. Now, Trump's candidate lost, but then won. J.D. Vance in Ohio, he might be one of the biggest whores ever. He was a never Trumper and then suddenly changed, and now...
shit, I forgot.
What?
T-Bone, you were going to come on tonight. I forgot all about. I would have sent you.
Oh, see.
God damn it. T-Bone.
You're so busy messing up.
Oh, for
T-Bone,
Christ's sake.
Listen, here's what we're going to do. T-Bone, send something to Brian if you'll be on next week. It would be a big help to me.
Well, by the way, Joey just texted me something. I'm not going to say what he said, but Joey Fulcher is the only one I know of that called a priest a jerk off. When Jerry was little, Joey, you don't mind if I tell the story?
He doesn't.
Joey was playing basketball, and he threw the ball, and it hit the alarm, and you can't yell at Joey. You can't. And the priest yelled at Joey, and Joey turned around and called him a jerk off.
Be interesting today to see, and not all priests are pedophiles or sexual deviants, but it'll be interesting. Well, you see there. Let's see. Trev's got an idea. Yeah, well, maybe. You know what else? And Trev, that does make me think of something that isn't what you were talking about. But Brian, you were saying about that zeitgeist or whatever it was.
Right,
in the
right.
60s.
Just thought.
You know what we had, honestly? I mean, we had the camaraderie, we had the newness, but we had the release valve of just getting totally wasted. Today, it's almost as if this issue is too serious to allow yourself not to be involved in it, right?
Right.
And I mean, there's some people like myself who are addicted to drugs and alcohol and can't use that. But a lot of people just feel, they can't. Back then, we were a bunch of kids who, were just kind of trying to change the country. And we did some good things. And the baby boomers have done some good things, just not enough. And now suddenly another way that my ideas were proven wrong. I honestly thought that when the old white men died off, that it would be better. There's an awful lot of youngins out there who are joining them. I love that name too, Bella
Lugosi.
Not Lugosi.
Lugosi. So,
Brian,
Dave, this
one
night went
one
quickly.
last question to you.
Sure.
Yeah. You started with some things that you felt in the Ukraine maybe were cause for a little optimism. I think
Right.
there's both it's here. How do you see, and you don't have a crystal ball, how forced, which I'm forcing you to do, how do you see this abortion issue playing out in the long run?
Well, exactly how it kind of has been. Certain states are getting their way. Our state, I think they just want these people to go away and cause problems in other states as far as costing states. You know, when you have to have all these abortions and a lot of people won't. They do need a larger workforce. That's part of it. You know, they don't give a damn about the child. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's again. Ronnie said it last week. It's about control, and this is a fight for control. And it's a minority trying to control the majority. They want minority rule, and this is all part of it. And of course, the lunatics on the far right evangelical side of that party, they want to get their piece too, and they've got to get it. You know, they need all of it, so they're willing to whatever they have to do to go against us. They will do so. I don't see anything. As long as the Supreme Court seems to be going in that direction, that's it.
Well,
they will get exactly what they want until somebody does something.
Yes. And I think the thing that disturbs me more is some people are resting with the idea, well, some states will still have abortion and da-da-da-da-da-da. I don't think that's the way it's going to be. I think if they will not be satisfied until they get a national ban of abortion. Kim, I don't get a lot. Could you be more specific? What did I get? I don't get much on all means. So send me a message, Kim, after the show to let me know what I don't get.
That'll open up a can of worms.
Well, there's a lot. Like I said, there's a lot of things I don't get. Everybody just send me what I don't get. I don't know.
Well, you know, I just, and you know, we've gotten to this double entendre in the chat, but I think, and this can be in a show in itself, and I've said this before, I think it's almost a thing about sex. I think that they are, again, it's about controlling us, and it's not so much control of not having children. It's almost like sexual control of us. They don't like the fact that we are, you know, I don't know. They see sex as something to reproduce, as we see something as something that produces a euphoria. You know, our number one euphoria. You can't deny it. At least that's just my opinion. I mean, by far. But that's what I think they want. They want control. And the ultimate control would be sexual control. Like, in other words, you can't do this or you can't do that. So there's a price you have to pay for doing it. You know what I mean? It's horrific. It really is The Handmaid's Tale.
Which is interesting. I didn't get to comment on that. I'll do it on Facebook or somewhere. The author of that, Margaret Atwood, came out, delivered a message a couple days ago, and she said, when I wrote that book, you know, I took it to the ultimate extreme, but I didn't really see that as much as a possibility. And she said, I certainly didn't see America, because she's Canadian, didn't see America there in actuality. Yep. That's so, whatever's in our wildest imaginations, it appears that there's a group of people out there given the power that will bring that from science fiction or fantasy to everyday reality.
Yeah, well,
And we can say fuck them, and that's nice. And we can say they're wrong. We got to figure out how to stop them.
yeah, it is. It is. Ron's right. It is about control, and neither one of us like any type of control. I mean, whether it was on the bandstand playing,
True.
it really was. We had problems with other people when they say, do this, don't do that, and you take away every creativity and anything that's good, anything that's good. You know what I mean? Whether it's sex or whether it's music, it doesn't matter. You can't take that away from people, and that's what they're trying to do.
And the other thing, Brian, that I'd like you to do next week, if you could, between now and then, would you grow some hair?
I wish I could. I got it where it counts, but not here. Okay, so doesn't matter. Oh, hold on. I forget I said that actually.
I know. What the hell are you talking about?
I'm talking about my underarms. Okay.
Okay, if that's what you were.
All right. Listen,
saying.
we do have to
thank
go,
you.
Dave.
No. Thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah.
In a selfish way, I get much more out of this. This is my vent time, and I just appreciate you being there to hearing me vent.
Yeah, we have to commiserate, and that in itself is somewhat pleasing. You know what I mean? So, all right. So anyway, gonna take it away, Dave. Take it away now. That wasn't.
What's that
fun.
song? I mean,
that was from "Give It Away, Give It Away, Give It Away"
That's
now
what it was.
from
That
the
was, I
Red Hot.
on that senior moment.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post, I guess, from 1971. I probably posted this before. Trip. I was 11 years old with the family, cousins. Some of them are gone, one or two, but I'll post something like that. So thank you, everybody. Have a short 1 movie at the end for you, and then we'll see you next week. Touch wood. Yeah, it's been a rough week, and we haven't even talked about Buffalo. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we'll be seeing him. All right. And here we go. And I'm going to go. See you. Think.
I love when you get that perplexed look.